Laurent Mekies has just admitted that Max Verstappen may be taking one of the biggest risks of his Formula One career. On July 25, 2026, reports revealed that Red Bull is receiving calls from strong drivers. Rival teams are still watching Verstappen closely, and speculation about his future has not disappeared. But Mekies still believes Verstappen will stay. And that is where this becomes explosive. Because if Red Bull is already attracting serious replacement interest, while its team principal publicly acknowledges the risk Verstappen is taking, then this is no longer a simple contract story. It is a battle over trust, performance, and whether the most valuable driver on the grid still believes Red Bull can deliver what he needs. One decision could reshape Red Bull, transform the driver market, and trigger the most dramatic move in Formula One. And the most revealing part of Mekies' message is not his confidence. It is the fear hidden underneath it. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why Mekies' admission matters, you have to look beyond one quote. Because this is not only about whether Max Verstappen stays with Red Bull, it is about what Red Bull has become without certainty. For years, Verstappen represented stability. He was the driver around whom everything could be built. The car, the strategy, the technical direction, the pressure inside the team, the confidence outside it. But once serious questions begin surrounding the future of a driver like Verstappen, the entire structure starts to feel different. And that is why Mekies' message carries so much weight. The available source says Red Bull is receiving calls from strong drivers. That sounds positive. It suggests the team still has influence. It suggests talented drivers still see Red Bull as a major opportunity. But there is another side to that story. Teams do not normally speak about replacement interest unless the possibility of change already exists somewhere in the background. That does not prove Verstappen is leaving. It does not prove Red Bull is preparing to replace him. The source does not provide that level of detail. But it does show that the driver market around Red Bull is active. And activity creates pressure. Every call from another driver raises a new question. Is Red Bull protecting itself? Is the team simply listening? Is it preparing for a future it still hopes will never arrive? Or is the attention around Verstappen already forcing Red Bull to think about life without him? That is where the situation becomes uncomfortable. Because Verstappen is not an ordinary driver. Replacing him would not mean filling an empty seat. It would mean replacing the center of Red Bull's competitive identity. Think of a football team losing the player who changes every match. You can sign another talented name. You can rebuild the system. You can adjust the strategy. But you cannot simply replace the influence. Verstappen's value is not only in speed. It is in the confidence he gives the team. When a driver consistently extracts everything from a car, engineers trust the feedback more deeply. Strategists can make bolder decisions. Rivals know that even a small mistake may be punished. The entire team operates with a different level of belief. That is why Mekies' confidence matters. He insists Verstappen's future is with Red Bull. But the same source also says he accepts Verstappen is taking a risk by staying. Those two ideas sit beside each other, and they create tension. On one side, confidence. On the other, risk. And risk only exists when the future is uncertain. If everything inside Red Bull felt completely secure, staying would not be described as a gamble. It would be the obvious choice. But once risk enters the conversation, the real question changes. It is no longer simply, will Verstappen stay? It becomes, what does Verstappen believe Red Bull can still become? Because a driver at his level does not only choose a team based on loyalty, he chooses based on possibility. The possibility of winning. The possibility of controlling his own future. The possibility of avoiding years spent waiting for a team to recover. That is why performance matters more than promises. Red Bull can say the right things. It can express confidence. It can point to its history. It can remind everyone of what Verstappen has already achieved with the team. But history does not guarantee the future. And elite drivers understand that better than anyone. They know how quickly Formula One can change. A dominant car can become vulnerable. A technical advantage can disappear. A strong organization can begin losing momentum. And a driver who waits too long can discover that the best opportunity has already passed. That is the risk Mekies appears to recognize. Not necessarily that Verstappen will leave immediately, but that staying requires belief. Belief in the car, Belief in the people. Belief in the direction. Belief that the problems can be solved before patience runs out. And belief becomes harder to maintain when rival teams continue showing interest. The available source refers to rival team attention. It does not identify every approach. It does not provide full details of negotiations. It does not confirm an agreement elsewhere. But even the existence of interest changes the situation. Because interest creates alternatives. And alternatives create leverage. The moment Verstappen has credible options, Red Bull can no longer rely only on the strength of the existing relationship. It must prove that staying is still the smartest decision. That is a much harder challenge. A contract can control where a driver is supposed to be. It cannot control what a driver believes. And belief is what eventually shapes every major decision. If Verstappen believes Red Bull is still the best place to win, the noise becomes less important. If he begins to believe another team offers a stronger future, every rumor becomes more dangerous. That is why Mekies' words should not be treated as a simple declaration of confidence. They sound more like a public defense of the project. A message to Verstappen, a message to the team, a message to rivals, and possibly a message to the drivers already calling Red Bull. The message is clear. The seat is not available. The future is still being built around Verstappen. The team still believes it can keep him. But confidence becomes convincing only when performance supports it. That is the first real pressure point. Red Bull must do more than speak about Verstappen's future. It must create a car that makes the answer obvious. A car that convinces him there is no better place to be. A car that removes the risk Mekies has already acknowledged. A car that turns loyalty into logic. And if Red Bull cannot do that, the interest from rival teams will not disappear. It will grow. Because every rival understands what Verstappen could change. His arrival would not only make another team stronger, it could make Red Bull weaker at the same time. That is the most dangerous part of the entire situation. One move could create two consequences. A new contender gains the most feared driver on the grid. Red Bull loses the driver around whom its entire competitive identity has been shaped. That is why this is bigger than a contract decision. It could change the balance of Formula One. And the deeper question is not whether Mekies sounds optimistic. It is why he needs to sound optimistic now. Because the moment a team begins defending the future publicly, the pressure behind the scenes has already become impossible to ignore. And that pressure becomes even more serious when you look at the calls Red Bull is receiving. Mekies says good drivers are interested. On the surface, that sounds like strength. Red Bull still matters. The seat still carries enormous value. The team still has enough status to attract serious attention. But this is where the story turns. Because strong drivers do not call unless they believe there may be an opening. They do not place themselves near a seat without seeing some level of uncertainty. That does not mean Verstappen has decided to leave. It does not mean Red Bull has started a replacement process. The available source does not confirm either of those things. But it does suggest that people inside the driver market are watching closely. And when the market begins watching one seat this carefully, every public statement becomes important. Every word matters. Every hesitation matters. Every expression of confidence matters. Because teams use language for more than explanation. They use it to control the atmosphere. Mekies saying Verstappen's future is with Red Bull is not only reassurance. It is positioning. It tells rival teams that Red Bull still believes it has control. It tells interested drivers that the seat is not open. And it tells Verstappen that the team still sees him as the center of the project. But the phrase about risk changes the tone. Because confidence and risk do not normally belong in the same sentence unless something important remains uncertain. If staying with Red Bull were completely safe, there would be no gamble. There would be no need to discuss risk. The decision would be simple. Stay with the team that knows you. Stay with the people who built around you. Stay with the structure that already understands how you race. But Mekies' own framing suggests the decision is not that simple. Staying may mean trusting that Red Bull can continue delivering what Verstappen needs. And trust is not built from old trophies. It is built from what the team can do next. That is the part Red Bull cannot escape. Past success gives the team credibility. It does not guarantee future success. Formula One moves too quickly. One season can change the balance. One technical direction can create an advantage. One wrong decision can cost months. And one driver can reach a point where waiting becomes more dangerous than leaving. That is why Verstappen's future is not only about loyalty. It is about timing. A driver can remain loyal to a team and still question whether staying is the best competitive decision. Those two feelings can exist together. Respect for the people, connection to the team, and doubt about the future. That is what makes this situation so difficult. Because Red Bull does not only need Verstappen to feel valued, it needs him to feel convinced. Those are not the same thing. A driver can know the team values him. He can know the organization wants him to stay. He can still look at the future and ask whether another path offers more security. And once that question appears, rival interest becomes much more powerful. A rival does not need to promise certainty. It only needs to offer a possibility that feels stronger than the risk of staying. That is where the balance begins to shift. Red Bull has familiarity. It has history. It has an established relationship with Verstappen. A rival may offer something else. A fresh project. A different technical direction. A new challenge. A chance to shape another team around him. The source does not identify a confirmed destination. It does not confirm an agreement. It does not provide the details of any offer. But the continued speculation matters because it shows the story is still alive. And if the story is still alive, Red Bull has not fully closed the door. That is why Mekies needs optimism. He needs the team to appear stable. He needs the driver market to believe Verstappen is staying. He needs Red Bull's own staff to believe the project is secure. Because uncertainty spreads, it starts with the driver. Then it reaches the engineers. Then the strategists. Then the sponsors. Then the other drivers watching for movement. One uncertain future can create pressure across an entire organization. Think of a tower built from connected blocks. Remove one block near the top and the structure may remain standing. Remove the central block and everything begins to move. Verstappen is not just one block inside Red Bull. He is closer to the center. His future affects the way the team is viewed. It affects how rivals judge Red Bull. It affects which drivers believe a seat may become available. And it affects whether the team still looks like the safest place for elite talent. That is why the incoming calls matter. They are not proof of an empty seat. They are proof that other drivers believe the situation is worth monitoring. And that alone creates pressure. Because Red Bull now has two conversations happening at once. The public conversation says Verstappen's future remains with the team. The private reality, at least from what Mekies has acknowledged, includes interest from other drivers and a level of risk around Verstappen staying. Those two conversations can coexist. But they cannot remain separate forever. Eventually, performance forces them together. If Red Bull delivers, the rumors weaken. The calls become less important. The risk begins to look smaller. And Verstappen's future becomes easier to defend. But if Red Bull struggles, everything changes. The same calls become more serious. The same speculation becomes harder to dismiss. The same statement of confidence begins to sound less like certainty and more like hope. That is the dangerous point. Because hope is not enough to hold the most valuable driver in Formula One. Only belief can do that. And belief must be earned with evidence. Not promises. Not public reassurance. Not memories of what the team once achieved. Evidence. A competitive car. A clear direction. A project that feels stronger next year than it does today. That is what Verstappen must see.